I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm providing some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literary and cultural studies. In this installment, I'm going to say some things about the socio-historical context of William Shakespeare's play, Othello, the Moor of Venice. Othello was probably written in 1603, and its first documented performance was in 1604. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Venice was an important site for maritime trade. City-states like Venice played an important role in the transition from feudal economic orders to the emerging economic system of mercantile capitalism. Mercantile capitalism required some different political, legal, economic, and social arrangements from those that had been characteristic of feudal economic orders. Here's how I've described some of the differences between feudalism and capitalism in an excerpt from another webcast.
The economic system of the Middle Ages in Europe was feudalism. Feudalism is characterized by subsistence agricultural production and cottage industry craft guild industrial production. In a feudal economic system, virtually everything that is grown and everything that is produced by a local community is consumed by the same community. There is very little international trade. The feudal economic order is rigid and static. There is virtually no class mobility. The structure takes the form of a pyramid with a mass of peasants at the bottom and a very few very rich aristocrats at the top. Opportunities for economic and social advancement in feudal society are very limited. Essentially, the only way to create new wealth in this system is to invade and conquer foreign territory. Beginning in the 16th century, the feudal economic order was challenged by the new revolutionary forces of capitalism. In England in the 16th century, there was a growth of international trade and a steady migration of rural peasants into the burgeoning mill towns where they worked as textile workers for the international wool trade. The advances in industrial production, in systems of distribution, and in bureaucratic organization made possible by, and even made necessary by, the emergence of capitalism evolved by the 20th century into the system of large-scale factory production that we come to recognize as a hallmark of late modernity.
The feudal economies of medieval Europe were land-based economies as opposed to capital-based economies. A particular earl or a duke or a count controlled some geographical area, maintained control of that area with support from lesser aristocrats such as knights and vassals, and the most obvious way to gain greater economic power was through military conquest, or perhaps through a marriage negotiation. Two particular aristocrats might marry a son to a daughter and thereby combine their realms.
These economic changes had some effect over time on the experience of being a human individual in these societies. In medieval Europe, there was a static social hierarchy. One was born into a particular place in this social hierarchy, and almost everyone died in the same situation in which they were born. In modernity, over time, there was increasing possibility of social mobility. One stood a better chance of improving one's condition and class status during a lifetime. In medieval Europe, most people were the subject of a feudal lord, but in modernity, increasingly, one might be the citizen of a modern republic. In medieval Europe, the community was emphasized over the individual, but in modernity, increasingly, the individual counted for more than the community. In medieval Europe, family relations were organized around the extended family, an extended network of even distant relations and sometimes non-related people who were considered part of the family. In modernity, increasingly, family was defined as the nuclear family, consisting of a man and a woman and their children. In medieval Europe, there was a great emphasis on social obligation and interdependence. In modernity, increasingly, the emphasis was all on self-reliance. Each person was expected to be responsible for oneself and not to depend on family or communal relations.
The capitalist economic system of Mediterranean seaport city-states like Venice was based on commerce, not conquest. Therefore, Venice didn't have a traditional landed aristocracy, such as those found in the inland regions of Europe. In Venice, access to influence and power didn't depend so much on birthright, aristocratic rank, and family kinship ties, but rather on individual merit, capabilities, and accomplishments. In theory, at least, a clever commoner, or even a foreigner, could succeed and thrive in a city-state like Venice.
Shakespeare's exploration of racial prejudice and the objectification of women are issues that are quite evident in Othello. But Shakespeare also treats issues of class tensions in the play. Here I want to look at the first scene, the dialogue between Iago and Rodrigo, and call your attention to how Iago expresses attitudes on both sides of the question of whether merit is more important than class privilege. In the opening lines, Rodrigo complains that Iago has not served him well in his pursuit of Desdemona. In response, Iago complains about how he has been unfairly passed over for a promotion. 3 great ones of the city, Iago says, have recommended him, and he knows that he is worth the promotion. Othello, he says, has seen his merit in battles at Cyprus and at Rhodes and other places. Notice the ambivalence here. Should Iago be promoted because of his merit or because he has the favor of important people? Nonetheless, Othello has appointed one Michael Cassio, a mere arithmetician, Iago says, a handsome fellow, well educated, but with no experience in battle. Surely, Iago's battle experience merits the promotion. Then Iago launches into a complaint about the decline of the old aristocratic values. Why, there's no remedy, he says. 'Tis the curse of service. Preferment goes by letter and affection, and not by old gradation, where each second stood heir to the first. Now, sir, be judge yourself whether I, in any just term, am affined to love the more. Rodrigo is all compliance, and agrees with him. Well, I would not follow him then, he says. Then Iago turns around and criticizes the servants in the old aristocratic order. You shall mark, he says, many a duteous and knee-crooking knave that, doting on his own obsequious bondage, wears out his time, much like his master's ass, for naught but provender, and when he's old, cashiered. Whip me such honest knaves.
Then Iago describes his own strategy. Others there are, he says, who, trimmed in forms and visages of duty, keep yet their hearts attending on themselves, and, throwing but shows of service on their lords, do well thrive by them, and when they have lined their coats, do themselves homage. These fellows have some soul, and such a one do I profess myself. For, sir, it is as sure as you are Rodrigo. Were I the Moor, I would not be Iago. In following him, I follow but myself. So, on balance, I think, Iago comes across as the new, ambitious, individualistic subject of modernity, rather than an exemplar of the old aristocratic order. Having made that point, I'll conclude this webcast. But, as always, if you have questions or comments, please send me an email.